Cyberpunk. It's the week of Cyberpunk, right? Cyberpunk, the 2077 came out. We've got a bunch of Cyberpunk news. Everybody's talking Cyberpunk, and Oz wanted to talk about, or he raised the question, because we've been talking about this behind, like, in our own, chats and everything, which is we wanted to talk about Cyberpunk, right? So you had a question for us, and what was that, Oz?
And we're talking Cyberpunk little c, the genre.
Yes. Okay,
not
that
game.
is right. That is very important to
Yes.
distinguish, right? We're talking about little c Cyberpunk, the
Little
genre.
c Cyberpunk.
Yeah.
The question is why Cyberpunk, little c, misses the mark of what is, I guess. The question is just why it misses the mark, but I think there's more to that question that needs to be added, because there's a we should be aware, right, that there is an aesthetic, but then there's also underlying themes of that entire world, right? And a lot of people just see the aesthetic, but they don't understand that there is a thorough anti-corporatist, anti-libertarian, very like basically leftist politic and feeling about what power that goes unchecked, what capitalist power when it goes unchecked, how that trickles down and affects everything into such a pervasive and ugly level, where it then actually kind of feeds back into that aesthetic and makes it where it's so grim, because this is the world and there is nothing you can do about it. But what can you do about it? Right. And I think a lot of cyberpunk media is, oh, well, we live here, let's make some money and get rich and figure it out, right? And just wreak some havoc, but not addressing what can we do as people, as a community, to undo the grim future that was basically established by the early cyberpunk writers in the 1980s as like kind of a reaction against Reaganism and trickle-down economics and all of that stuff.
Mm-hmm. So you're setting the stage here as saying Cyberpunk falls down. Where it falls down is that it's over time it hasn't changed, in the sense that all it's doing is telling us what's wrong, but not providing any solutions. Is that accurate?
What you said is accurate. That's not what I was saying specifically, but I agree, because I know that's one of the main things that we've been talking about behind the scenes.
If I could, sure. Is what you're saying, Oz, more that people pay more attention to the aesthetic and look at all the flashy tech and neon and cool future stuff about Cyberpunk, without also really looking into the criticism of our culture and technology and capitalist civilization that is also very inherent in, or should be inherent in the genre?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, now that said, that's a very surface level thing too, right? I think everybody who plays a cyberpunk game or watches cyberpunk media is aware of the themes. They're aware of what is being presented to them. Like, wow, that really sucks. How did that happen? But then they're just like, all right, well, cool world, bro. Cool speculative fiction. Let's, just dive in, and then I'll just bounce back out and not even really think about what I just processed and what those real ties are to our current situation.
I think for me, my general boredom with cyberpunk, when there is, though I really love the cyberpunk genre and have a lot of fun with it, and also spend time subverting it from time to time as well. But damn it, losing how I wanted to say this. I am a wonderful broadcaster.
So I'm gonna chip in and give my few thoughts. Like I said, I was having this conversation with UGE Plex like right before the show started. But there is a movement, or I guess the movement of cyberpunk from its introduction, / heyday in the 80s. And then it was a critique of this sort of Pollyannish futurism that existed then. There was this idea that everything was going to be great, everything was going to be fine. Like, look at Star Trek; it's amazing. Everything's, we've unlocked all of this cool tech, and everything's going to be fine. Assumption that tech was going to be great and that it was always a good, and it was an overwhelmingly white American utopian view of the future. And Cyberpunk comes along, and it offers a critique to that. It says, no, you're not going to get that if you keep going the way that you're going. So it describes, if we keep going the way we're going, what it's going to end up like. It has its heroes, and I use that term very, very loosely, more like anti-heroes, that are wreathed in counterculture. Mm-hmm. And the counterculture in actions, in the way they look, in the way that they talk. And these are characters, the anti-heroes, that are produced by this world. Like, you're meant to not like them. You're meant to dislike them. They're not good characters. They're in many cases bad people, but they are produced by this world, so you can feel bad for them. You can empathize with them, even as you're saying, like, dude, I don't want to be that. And then, of course, you have the futuristic technology that's just driving all of this kind of stuff, and the unchecked corporate libertarianism, right? Like, because Cyberpunk also has this huge, I think, unlooked at idea of individual libertarianism is like a very good thing as well. And I think there's some critique to be made there along the way. But here's my problem. Where it is now is that the counterculture actions and the look and the speech, along with the anti-heroes produced by this world, produced by our current world, are now being sold back to us as fun and hip and isn't this neat? Mm-hmm. And that bothers me so bad that corporate America or corporate world is now benefiting by selling us back the thing that should have critiqued them back in the day and had power to tell the truth on them. And now they're like, oh, cool, we'll take that and sell it back to you and make these anti-heroes the heroes. Make the anti-heroes like, look at this guy. He's just living his life, doing whatever feels right in the moment. And I'm like, that's not a good thing. Like, you've produced people that are so into themselves, just wanting to get by for themselves, just wanting to do their own thing at any cost. That's what the world produces, and I don't like it. Like, I don't think that's an aspirational thing to be. And it's like, reminds me of all of these different things in media where somebody does a critique and then people take it and they lift it up to be the thing which is worth emulating instead of the thing that is being critiqued. Right. I hope that all makes sense. That was a very long way to get to where I was getting to, but
absolutely, yeah. I mean, we were basically saying, like, there's a lionization of the critique. So the critique is no longer a critique. The critique is just, wow, that character looks cool and acts cool, love them, but then no thought underlying how they were produced, why they were produced. And then also the question of, like, what can they do, right? The world is that's the other thing about Cyberpunk, is the world is designed, it is systematically designed by these corporations who have billions of dollars at their disposal to keep you thinking about yourself and not to organize against them. And any organization that is done against them is met swiftly with either physical violent force or anti-propaganda or anything. So it's basically shut you up.
Yeah, I think maybe that helps me recover my point that I was getting to. An aspect of the cyberpunk genre that I don't enjoy, which is present in other genres as well, is the grimdark thing. The idea that everything is bad and you can't do anything about it. And if you try, you're just going to get crushed. I don't want to play or read or watch in that setting, except to maybe dip my toes in, maybe every now and again when I'm in a bad mood. But mostly I want to play a game where my characters can do something and make things measurably better, if not for the world, at least maybe for my neighborhood or that person over there. And I think without that sort of element of this sort of community level grit pulling itself up and doing stuff in spite of the awful capitalist corporations trying to grind them into dust and then turn them into a product they can sell to somebody else. Without that sort of lo-fi, a high-tech, low-life hope punk aspect, I don't like cyberpunk.
Yeah, and maybe that's part of it too, is that Cyberpunk, like the games that we play in Cyberpunk, we were talking about Cyberpunk 2020, Cyberpunk Red, Shadowrun, the role-playing games that we play really reflect who we are. Like they're not they're not particularly aspirational. Like anarchism in Shadowrun isn't a value statement. People are in general in Shadowrun are with very few exceptions, and they are there, and there are exceptions. But the anarchists in Shadowrun don't often strike you as principled philosophical anarchists, right? Like they're just punk, right? Like they're just like, don't tell me what to do, corpse are bad, like repeating this sort of line. And I want a game, I want a genre that says like, yes, actually, not only is anarchism like, a mohawk, right, and a dagger to the throat of a CEO, but anarchism can be a recognition that, let me see if I can get this right. I'm an anarchist because I believe in the value of every human. Literally every single person has value and has worth. Therefore, no person or group of people should be able to coerce or have ungiven authority over me, because that doesn't square with my view of humanity. I want to help humanity. I want to save people. And to the extent that the state makes it hard to do that, that's why I'm an anarchist. And it has nothing to do with my mohawk, as cool as that might be, or the color of my hair, or a knife to anybody's throat. It has to do with wanting things to be better so much that I'm not willing to accept something just because it laid claim to a particular amount of money or a particular, piece of land. I hope that makes sense.
Absolutely.
Again, where I'm like trying to grab all these different pieces. I've been thinking about this and swirling around, and I haven't got to, write my thesis nor defend it.
Yeah.
But,
well, it's important, I think, something you said about like that everybody has value. It's important to also see the flip side of that is that corporations will view every person as value that can be extracted for themselves, right? So it's not that you have monetary value, it's that you have value as an existing being that deserves to be treated with respect and equality and power, that you to dictate your own life and to be able to work together as a community. And if something isn't working for a large collective of people, it should be addressed and not squashed, right?
Yeah.
So the thing about grimdark, and just about this was writing advice that was given to me, is that you can go into the deepest, darkest, dankest tunnels that you possibly want in fiction. But there always has to be a light at that end of the tunnel. There has to be a hope and something that people can drive for, because if you don't have that, if the world will always be static and will always keep you down and there is nothing that you can do, then you don't have that light and you just exist in this darkness and you are part of that problem. So the thing about cyberpunk is that what authors need to be doing, and people thematic and us as game masters, right, if we're going to bring something like this to the table, is we need to be thinking, what is a solution, and let's explore it and let's see how that could potentially work out or not work out. And I think it's about, because it's not like we have solutions for these things, but maybe we do. There are ideas that we can explore, that we can formulate, to see if that is the light at the end of the tunnel. There are plenty of revolutionary ideas. There's plenty of possibilities, but it takes a lot because the world has been so difficult to get out of it. And we feel that today in 2020 with basically everything that's happening in our world. We're seeing it. And that's why Cyberpunk is so hard right now to swallow, because it's basically like everything that we've been warned about is here, minus all of the flashy tech.
I think that that there's still a place for the warning right now, because it's almost here. It's basically here, but there's still a place for the warning.
There's variation for sure.
I think the real problem with Cyberpunk is that it just hasn't changed. Like, I think it's okay. You don't have to have a light at the end of the tunnel if your goal with your art is just to be a grim warning. You don't have to offer that light. That's not necessary. Back in the late 70s, early 80s, that there was a lot of, I think, use for that, to just be like, look, guys, this is where we're headed. Do you take a look?
Is this what you want?
Yeah.
Right, and all the kids were like,
you know
"Hell
what?
yes,
You know
that's
what?
what I want."
You know
and
what,
then they
though?
got jobs making computer games.
But you know what, though? Like, that not offering a light as part of a critique is because you're seeing ahead of something that hasn't happened yet. You are warning, hey, if this happens, this is going to be as dark as it gets, and I don't know how we're going to get ourselves out of it. But when there are elements of Cyberpunk that are now that we are currently facing, right? So say, God, I don't even want to get into the examples, but like whatever we are currently facing, we now need to, whatever the analog is in our Cyberpunk world that mirrors our own, we need to provide lights and solutions, right?
Yeah, I get what you're saying.
Because otherwise, then you're basically saying like, we are screwed now, and that's it.
Yeah,
we're done.
decades
Or if
ago.
you're writing an RPG, like at least offer that fantasy of making things better, right? Even if you don't have all the answers, at least give you the option of doing it.
Yeah, yeah. I agree. I just wanted to push back against the idea that you have to have that. It's just I think it needs to be there in Cyberpunk now, because it's much more immediate. The threat that is being warned against is, so it's like, okay, we've been warning you forever. Now it's time to solve the problem, because now is the time we were talking about.
Yeah, now we need forward thinkers
Right.
that are looking ahead to solve the problems we have now, and then also warn against new problems that old Cyberpunk hasn't addressed yet.
Yeah.
I think you're right. So somebody needs to get on that.
I don't think I have any definitive statements other than the direction Cyberpunk is going as a genre, right? Because I mean, no matter what I say the genre means, like the world is going to do what it wants with that term, right? So it's not any use just saying like, no, Cyberpunk means this. I mean, it already doesn't is part of the problem. So yeah, I think I'd like to have something do what Cyberpunk did in the 80s, but also give me some, I don't want to overuse the word, but give me some hope, right? Give me an encouragement to choose something better for everybody, not just myself. And I think that's a genre that people are desperate for.
Hope punk is a genre.
Hope punk, yeah.
I was, we can talk about this for a second. Hope punk, in the way it's been written so far, is almost post-apocalyptic to a fault, right? It's about making something good out of the shit that you've been given, but there's not much hope punk that's written from the perspective of there's still time to turn this around.
Sure.
You know what I'm saying? And there's a slight difference, right? You go to She-Ra, you're already in it, right? You're already in the absolute bad. So what are you going to do now that you're refugees and just trying to get by, right? But like, what what can we do before it all gets there, right? Like, what can you do 10 minutes before Blade Runner, right, to stop it from becoming Blade Runner?
Yeah.
That's sort of what I want to see. How do you stop the corpse before the corpse ruin everything forever?
Yeah.
Without a nuclear bomb, right?
Right.
Yeah.